The princess couldn't bear children until the duke took her hand and said, "You already gave me everything." She stood in the moonlit chapel, trembling hands pressed against her barren womb, tears streaming down porcelain cheeks as the physician's words echoed like a death sentence. "Your Highness will never carry a child." Princess Isolde of Ravenshire had just lost everything, her purpose, her worth, her future, in a single devastating diagnosis. 3 years of marriage to the cold Duke of Ashford, 3 years of desperate prayers and humiliating examinations, and now this final, crushing verdict. She didn't hear him enter, didn't sense his presence until his calloused fingers wrapped around hers with unexpected gentleness, and his voice, that voice she'd learned to fear for its indifference, broke with something she'd never heard before, raw, unguarded emotion. "Isolde," he whispered, and she realized he'd never spoken her name like that, never looked at her with eyes that held anything but duty. "Wait, before the next confession unfolds, if this story has already stirred your heart, tell us where you're watching from. To make sure you don't miss the next betrayal, kiss, or redemption, subscribe and join our circle. The next heartbeat might change everything." Now, back to the scene. The Duke of Ashford, Lord Adrian Blackwood, was not supposed to be in the chapel at midnight. He was not supposed to see his wife's grief laid bare, her carefully constructed mask shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces. But he had followed her from their chambers, compelled by something he couldn't name, some magnetic pull that had been growing stronger with each passing day of their loveless arrangement. "Don't," Isolde choked out, turning her face away. Even in devastation, she maintained the rigid posture of royalty. "Please don't look at me. I know what this means. I know the marriage can be annulled now." "You're free to find someone who can." "Stop." His command was gentle but absolute. He moved closer, and she could smell the scent of leather and night air that clung to him. "You think I came here to discuss annulment? What else could you possibly want from a barren wife?" The word tasted like ash in her mouth. Barren. It was all she would ever be now, all history would remember. Princess Isolde, the beautiful failure, the royal disappointment, the woman whose womb was as cold and empty as the marble halls of Ashford Manor. Adrian's jaw tightened. For 3 years he had kept his distance, honoring the political arrangement that had shackled them together. King Leopold had offered his youngest daughter to secure an alliance with the powerful Blackwood Duchy, and Adrian had accepted out of duty, nothing more. Isolde had been 17, a porcelain doll with sapphire eyes and hair like spun gold, terrified and alone. He had promised himself he would be kind, respectful, distant. He would give her space, freedom, everything except his heart, because his heart had died years ago in a war that had taken everything he loved. But somewhere between the awkward wedding night when he'd kissed her forehead instead of claiming his marital rights, and tonight, watching her break in the moonlight, something had shifted. "I want," he said slowly, each word carefully chosen, "to understand why you're crying alone in a chapel instead of letting your husband comfort you." "Comfort?" Isolde laughed bitterly, the sound foreign and harsh. "You've barely spoken 10 words to me in 3 months. You take your meals in the study, sleep in the East Wing, and treat me like a fragile ornament you're afraid to break. Don't pretend this changes anything." "It changes everything." He reached for her chin, tilting her face toward the candlelight. "And you're wrong about the words. I've spoken thousands to you, in my head, where cowards keep their truths." Her breath caught. His thumb traced the silver path of her tears, and for the first time since their wedding, She saw him, truly saw him. Not the ice-carved duke with his reputation for ruthlessness, not the war hero with shadows in his eyes, but a man struggling with something that looked dangerously close to tenderness. "The physician said it was my punishment," she whispered, "for being too proud, too vain. My mother had 7 children. My sisters are all pregnant or have multiple heirs. And I can't even fulfill the one purpose I was trained for since birth. Then we'll find another purpose. You don't understand. Without an heir, your title passes to your cousin, the man who tried to have you killed in Spain." Adrian's expression darkened. Lord Marcus Blackwood was a viper in velvet, a man who had celebrated every one of Adrian's near deaths in battle, who waited like a vulture for the duchy to fall into his grasping hands. The thought of Marcus inheriting Ashford, of touching anything Adrian had built, made his blood run cold. "Marcus will inherit nothing," Adrian said flatly. "There are other ways. Adoption isn't recognized for ducal succession. You know that. Unless—" She hesitated, and he saw the exact moment understanding crystallized in her eyes, the moment hope died and was replaced by something worse, acceptance. "Unless you take a mistress, father and heir outside the marriage. The law would allow it, with my written consent. Isolde, it's the logical solution. I could retire to the country estate, live quietly. You could choose someone suitable, someone fertile. I wouldn't contest it. I would even—" Her voice cracked, but she forced the words out. "I would even help raise the child as my own, give them legitimacy. It would be my gift to you for 3 years of patience." The chapel fell silent except for the guttering candles and the distant sound of wind against ancient stone. Adrian stared at his wife, this brave, broken creature who was offering to destroy herself to save him, and felt something crack open in his chest, something he'd locked away after watching his entire company burn in a French ambush. "No," he said. "No. I won't do it. I won't take a mistress, won't father a bastard, won't humiliate you that way." "Then what will you do? Let Marcus inherit? Let him tear apart everything you've built, everything your family stood for? He'll sell the tenants' lands, dismantle your charities, reverse every reform you fought for? I know what he'll do." Adrian's hands cupped her face with a gentleness that made her want to weep. "But I also know what I won't do. I won't sacrifice you on the altar of duty. Not again. Not ever." "You never sacrificed me before." "Didn't I?" His smile was sad, self-mocking. "I sacrificed you the moment I agreed to this marriage. You were 17, Isolde, a child playing dress-up in her mother's gowns. And I was 30, already half dead inside, agreeing to take a bride I had no intention of loving, because love was a luxury I couldn't afford. I told myself I was being noble, giving you freedom and respect. But really, I was just being a coward." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "I don't understand." "I know. I've made sure you wouldn't." He released her, stepped back, and the loss of his warmth felt like winter descending. "Tomorrow, I'm leaving for London. There's a physician there, a specialist in women's ailments. He's helped other couples who—" "No!" Isolde's voice turned sharp with humiliation. "No more physicians, no more examinations and prodding and pitying looks. I won't be paraded through London like a medical curiosity. I've endured enough. Then I'll go alone. I'll research other options." "Why?" The question burst from her like a dam breaking. "Why do you care? You've kept me at arm's length for 3 years." "You've never we've never." She couldn't say it, couldn't voice the truth that lay between them like a chasm. "You don't want me. You made that clear on our wedding night. So why does it matter whether I can bear children or not?" Adrian flinched as if she'd struck him. When he spoke, his voice was raw. I made that choice to protect you. From what? From me. He turned away, shoulders rigid with tension. From what I'd become in the war. From the nightmares that wake me screaming. From the violence that still lives in my hands. I thought if I kept my distance, if I never claimed you as my wife in truth, you might have a chance at happiness. Maybe you'd take a lover someday, someone gentle and whole. I wouldn't contest it, wouldn't even blame you. I just wanted you to have something better than a husband who flinches at loud noises and sees blood on his hands in every mirror. The confession hung in the air like smoke. Isolde stared at his back, at the rigid line of his spine, and suddenly understood the separate chambers, the careful distance, the way he always left a room when her laughter rang too loud or too sudden. "You're an idiot," she said softly. He turned, shocked. A noble, self-sacrificing idiot. She moved toward him, each step deliberate. "Did it never occur to you that I might want a husband with nightmares? That I might prefer a man who's been broken and put himself back together, rather than some simpering lord who's never known real pain? Isolde, I was 17, yes. Terrified, yes. But I wasn't blind." She stopped inches from him, close enough to see the silver threading through his dark hair, the scar above his left eyebrow, the exhaustion etched into lines around his eyes. "I saw you at our wedding, saw the way you looked at me, like I was something precious and fragile and utterly terrifying. And I thought, here is a man who knows the cost of things, who won't treat me like a doll or a prize. You don't know what you're saying." "Don't I?" Her hand found his chest, feeling the hammering of his heart beneath her palm. "For 3 years I've watched you, learned you. The way you take your tea, the books you read, how you gentle the horses with infinite patience, but tear through correspondence like each letter is a personal insult. I've seen you work until midnight, helping tenants rebuild their homes. I've heard you play piano when you think no one's listening, these heartbreaking melodies that sound like prayers for the dead. And I've waited, Adrian, waited for you to see me as something other than a duty or a regret. You are not a regret. Then what am I?" The question hung between them, sharp and necessary. Adrian closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, she saw something that looked like surrender. "You're the reason I come home," he said quietly. "The reason I stopped drinking myself numb. The reason I started believing that maybe, somehow, I could be something other than a ghost haunted by ghosts." His hand covered hers, pressing it firm against his heart. "You're the woman I fall in love with every morning when I see you in the garden, talking to the roses like they're your confidants. You're the ache in my chest when I hear you laugh with the servants, so free and bright, and know I'm too damaged to be the cause of that joy. You're everything I want and nothing I deserve. And the cruelest joke God ever played was making you my wife when I have no right to claim you." Tears spilled down Isolde's cheeks, but these were different. Not the bitter tears of earlier, but something warm and painful and achingly sweet. "You already claimed me," she whispered. 3 years ago, when you kissed my forehead instead of demanding your rights. When you gave me the library key and said, everything here is yours. When you taught me to ride without making me feel foolish for being afraid. You've been claiming me in 1,000 small ways, Adrian. You just never asked if I wanted to be claimed in return." "And do you?" His voice was hoarse, barely controlled. "Want to be claimed?" "Yes." The word was simple, absolute. "By you. Only you. Children or no children, heir or no heir. I want this marriage to be real. I want—" She faltered, color rising in her cheeks. "I want my husband to stop sleeping in the East Wing." Something flickered in Adrian's eyes. Hunger, hope, and a vulnerability so profound it made her breath catch. "If I start," he said slowly, "I won't be able to stop. I've held back too long, wanted you too much. It won't be gentle or patient. It will be 3 years of starvation, finally fed." "Good." Her hand slid up to his neck, fingers tangling in his hair. "I don't want gentle. I want real. I want messy and complicated and human. I want a husband who sees me as a woman, not a porcelain princess who might shatter. You might regret this. The only thing I regret is wasting 3 years we could have spent actually married, instead of living like polite strangers." Adrian's control shattered. He hauled her against him, and she gasped at the solid heat of him, at finally feeling desired instead of protected. His mouth found hers with a desperation that bordered on reverence, and she opened to him like a flower to rain. 3 years of loneliness dissolving in the space of a heartbeat. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "The physician was wrong," he said roughly. "You're not barren. You're not cursed or being punished. Medicine doesn't know everything, and one man's opinion isn't divine judgment. But nothing. We'll find answers. We'll try every specialist in England and Europe if we have to. And if we're meant to have children, we will. If we're not," he cupped her face, thumbs stroking her cheekbones with aching tenderness, "then we'll build something else. Libraries, schools, charities that outlive us. We'll fill this cold manor with life in other ways. We'll adopt if you want, or name an heir from the family." There are options beyond despair and martyrdom. And Marcus? Marcus can go to hell. Adrian's smile was fierce and sharp. "I didn't survive 3 wars to let a snake inherit my legacy. We'll fight him together, legally, politically, however we must. But I won't let him take what's ours." "Ours," Isolde repeated, tasting the word. It felt like coming home. "Ours," he confirmed. "This marriage, this life, this future. Whatever it looks like, we build it together. No more distance, no more pretending." She nodded, unable to speak past the emotion closing her throat. Adrian swept her into his arms, ignoring her startled laugh, and carried her out of the chapel like she weighed nothing. The portrait gallery watched their passage with painted eyes, generations of Blackwoods bearing witness to this strange, sudden shift from performance to reality. When they reached the ducal chambers, his chambers, she realized, not the separate apartments she'd occupied for 3 years, Adrian set her down with unexpected care. The room was masculine and spare, dark wood furniture, a massive bed with midnight blue hangings, bookshelves lining every wall. It smelled of leather and the cedar oil he used for shaving, and Isolde felt a rush of possessive satisfaction that this space, so quintessentially Adrian, would now be hers too. "Last chance," he said, though his hands remained on her waist, unwilling to let go. "We can go slow, court each other properly. I can—" She silenced him with a kiss, pouring 3 years of longing into it. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright with mischief and desire. "If you're trying to be noble again, Your Grace, you're failing spectacularly." "Thank God," he muttered, and claimed her mouth again. They fell into the bed in a tangle of silk and linen, buttons flying, propriety abandoned. Isolde discovered that her husband's body was a map of scars and stories. The bullet wound in his shoulder, the saber cut across his ribs, the burn mark on his forearm from pulling a soldier from a burning tent. She kissed each mark with reverence, claiming every damaged inch of him as hers, while Adrian worshipped her with the single-minded intensity of a man finally permitted to love his wife. "You're beautiful," he breathed against her throat, her collarbone, the curve of her breast. "So goddamn beautiful, it hurts to look at you. I've wanted this. Wanted you since the day I saw you in your father's court, wearing that ridiculous green dress with all the ruffles, looking at me like I was a fairy tale come to life instead of a killer with a title. You're not a killer, she gasped as his mouth found sensitive places she didn't know existed. You're a protector. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. She pulled him up to meet her eyes, needing him to see the truth in hers. Killers don't rebuild cottages for widows. They don't read bedtime stories to tenants' children. They don't play sad music in the dark because they're mourning men who died under their command. You carry their weight, Adrian. That makes you human, not monstrous. Something broke in his expression, some last wall of self-defense crumbling into dust. He buried his face in her neck, and she felt the dampness of tears against her skin. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Too bad, she replied fiercely. You're stuck with me. For better or worse, remember. You promised. I did. He raised his head, and his smile was crooked, almost boyish. And I'm a man of my word. They made love with the awkwardness of first times and the passion of long-denied hunger. It wasn't perfect. There were fumbles and adjustments, moments of laughter and gasps of surprise. But it was real and honest, and when Isolde finally cried out his name in completion, Adrian felt something in his soul shift back into alignment, like a dislocated bone finally set right. Afterwards, they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. The candles had burned low, casting the room in amber shadows. Outside, dawn was still hours away, but Isolde felt like she'd already survived a lifetime since sunset. What happens now? She asked, softly. Now? Adrian pressed a kiss to her hair. Now we sleep. Tomorrow we face the world, together. Your cousin will contest us. Hell, spread rumors, claim the marriage is invalid without an heir. Let him try. Adrian's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. I've defeated worse enemies on worse terrain. Marcus is a politician, not a warrior. He fights with words and influence. So we'll fight back the same way. We'll make allies, shore up support, prove the marriage is strong and legitimate. By parading our love in public, society will mock us. Married couples aren't supposed to actually like each other. He chuckled, the sound rumbling through his chest. Then we'll be scandalous, revolutionary even. The Duke and Duchess of Ashford actually happy. What a novel concept. She traced the scar on his ribs, following its path with her fingertip. And if I still can't conceive, if the physician was right, then we'll adapt. My grandmother's will includes provisions for adopted heirs. Marcus's lawyers haven't found that document yet, but it exists. I've had my solicitor searching the archives. He caught her hand, brought it to his lips. I'm not giving up on you, Isolde. Not now, not ever. Whatever comes, we face it side by side. You're very certain for a man who ignored his wife for 3 years. I wasn't ignoring you. I was watching you, learning you, falling hopelessly in love while convincing myself I was being noble. He shifted to look at her properly, propping himself on one elbow. Do you know what really changed tonight? In the chapel? You tell me. I heard you say the word Baron, and I realized I was about to lose you. Not to death or another man, but to despair, to the lie that your only value is your womb. And I wouldn't let that happen. Not when you're so much more than anyone's incubator. You're brilliant and kind and fierce. You've transformed this entire estate in 3 years. The tenants adore you. The servants actually smile now. You've brought life to Ashford in ways that have nothing to do with bearing children. Tears pricked Isolde's eyes again, but she blinked them back. You really see me. I always have. I was just too scared to let you see me back. And now, Now you know everything. The nightmares, the scars, the guilt, all of it. If you want to go back to separate chambers tomorrow, I'll understand." She kissed him hard, effectively ending that particular line of thought. "I'm not going anywhere," she said against his mouth. "You're stuck with me, remember." Best promise I ever made. They drifted toward sleep in each other's arms, safe and warm, despite the battles that awaited them. But neither could know that in London, at that very moment, Lord Marcus Blackwood was receiving a letter from his spy in the Ashford household. A letter describing the Duchess's visit to the physician, the damning diagnosis, and the opportunity it presented. Marcus smiled as he read, his pale eyes glittering with malice. The Baron Duchess would be his weapon, and by the time he was finished, Adrian Blackwood would lose everything he'd fought so hard to protect. The morning came too quickly, sunlight spilling through the curtains like liquid gold. Isolde woke to find herself wrapped around Adrian like a vine, her leg thrown over his hip, her hair a tangled mess across his chest. He was already awake, watching her with an expression so tender it made her heart stutter. "Hello, wife," he murmured, voice rough with sleep. "Hello, husband." She stretched languorously, pleased by the way his eyes tracked the movement. "Any regrets yet?" "Only that we wasted 3 years." "Then we'll have to make up for lost time." His response was thoroughly enthusiastic, and by the time they finally emerged from the chamber, disheveled, starving, and ridiculously happy, half the day had passed. The servants tried and failed to hide their knowing smiles. Mrs. Henderson, the housekeeper who had served the Blackwood family for 30 years, actually winked at Isolde. "Will their graces be taking luncheon in the dining room?" she asked, with perfect formality that didn't quite mask her approval. "Yes, thank you, Mrs. Henderson," Adrian replied, his arm firmly around Isolde's waist. "And please inform the staff that the Duchess will be moving into the ducal apartments. Have her things transferred today." "Already done, Your Grace. We moved them this morning." Isolde blinked in surprise. "This morning? How did you—" Mrs. Henderson's smile was positively smug. "The staff has been waiting 3 years for you two to sort yourselves out. We weren't about to waste any time once it finally happened." Adrian laughed, a genuine, unfettered sound that Isolde realized she'd never heard before. It transformed his face, erasing years and shadows, making him look almost boyish. "Apparently, our household is more observant than we thought." "Apparently," Isolde agreed, fighting a blush. "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson." "My pleasure, Your Grace. It's good to see life in these halls again." They ate lunch in the sunny dining room, feeding each other bites of cold chicken and fresh bread, drinking wine that tasted like celebration. Isolde kept expecting to wake up, to find this was all a dream born of desperation and grief. But Adrian's hand remained solid in hers, his thumb stroking her knuckles with absent affection, and slowly she began to believe it was real. "We need to discuss strategy," Adrian said eventually, though he looked reluctant to introduce practicality into their bubble of happiness. "Marcus will have heard about your diagnosis by now. He has spies everywhere." "How?" "The physician. Dr. Graves has gambling debts. Marcus owns those debts, which means he owns the doctor's discretion, or lack thereof." Isolde felt a flash of violation, then anger. "He's been spying on us?" "On me, specifically, waiting for any weakness he can exploit. Your inability to conceive—" He held up a hand when she flinched. "The diagnosis of inability to conceive," he corrected carefully, "is exactly the kind of ammunition he's been hoping for. He'll take it to the House of Lords, argue that a ducal marriage without heir-producing capability should be annulled or set aside. He'll claim it's his duty to preserve the Blackwood legacy. Can he do that, legally? It's complicated. The marriage itself is valid. We consummated it. We're both of sound mind and appropriate rank. But the succession is where he has leverage. Without a direct heir, the title passes to the next male relative, which is Marcus. However, Adrian's smile turned sharp, predatory. My grandmother, the Dowager Duchess, was extraordinarily forward-thinking. She amended the family charter to allow for adopted heirs to inherit, provided they're adopted legally and acknowledged publicly before the title holder's death. But you said adoption isn't recognized for ducal succession. In general, no. But family charters supersede general law in cases of ancient titles. The Blackwood Duchy predates the Norman conquest. Our charter has provisions the crown would be hard-pressed to overturn, especially since it was ratified by 3 separate kings. Marcus doesn't know about this because the original document is in the private family archive, not the public records. His lawyers have been searching, but they're looking in the wrong places. Isolde's mind raced through the implications. So, if we adopt a child and formally acknowledge them as your heir, Marcus has no claim. Exactly. But there's a timing issue. The adoption must be completed and registered before any succession dispute reaches the courts. Once Marcus files his claim, the courts could freeze our ability to make changes to the succession. We need to act fast. How fast? Days, not weeks. Adrian squeezed her hand. I know this isn't how you imagined building a family. I know it's rushed and political and nothing like the romantic dream. But it's still a family, Isolde interrupted, her voice firm. A child who needs parents, and parents who need a child. Maybe it's not the traditional path, but since when have we been traditional? His expression softened with relief and love. You're remarkable, you know that. I'm practical, and I'm tired of Marcus Blackwood controlling our lives from the shadows. Let's beat him at his own game. That's my Duchess. Adrian stood, pulling her up with him. I'll send word to my solicitor to begin the search immediately. There are orphanages in London and— No. Isolde's tone was thoughtful, her gaze distant. Not London. Here, in the village. What do you mean? Remember the fire last month? The tenant cottage that burned? Adrian's face darkened with memory. The Marshalls, Thomas and Anne, they died trying to save their neighbors. They left behind a daughter, Lily. She's 6 years old. Isolde's eyes were bright with sudden certainty. I've been visiting her at the vicar's house. He's been caring for her temporarily, but he has 6 children of his own. Lily is bright and sweet and utterly heartbroken. She draws pictures of her parents, tells stories about them to anyone who'll listen. She's not trying to forget them. She's trying to keep them alive. Isolde. I know what you're thinking, that we're using her, exploiting her loss for political gain. But Adrian, she has no one, no family, no prospects beyond becoming a scullery maid or worse. We could give her education, opportunity, a future. And she caught. She could give us— Her voice caught. She could give us a chance to love someone the way we never got to love each other in the beginning, properly, intentionally, from the start. Adrian studied his wife's face, seeing the fierce protectiveness there, the maternal instinct that society claimed she lacked. You've already decided, he said softly. You want her. I want her, Isolde confirmed. Not as a political pawn, but as our daughter. Truly. Is that naive? It's beautiful. He cupped her face, kissing her with exquisite tenderness. And yes, absolutely yes. We'll do it right. We'll court her, let her know us, give her choice in the matter as much as a 6-year-old can have choice. We won't force her or rush her. And if she says no, then we find another way, Isolde finished. But I don't think she'll say no. She asked me last week if angels could be duchesses, because her mother told her angels watch over people. I think she wants to be watched over, Adrian. Wants to belong somewhere safe. Then we'll make sure she knows she belongs with us. Adrian pulled Isolde close, resting his chin on top of her head. We should tell her about your diagnosis. When she's older. Make sure she understands that our inability to have biological children isn't why we chose her. That we chose her because she's herself, not because she was convenient or necessary. You're thinking far ahead. I learned in war that the battles you don't prepare for are the ones that destroy you. If we're doing this, we do it right. Lily will never doubt she's wanted, loved, chosen. Not for a title, but for herself. Isolde turned in his arms, wrapping her hands around his neck. How did I get so lucky? 3 years thinking I was trapped in a cold marriage, and it turns out I married the best man I've ever known. Don't let that get around, Adrian said dryly. I have a reputation for ruthlessness to maintain. Too late. I'm going to tell everyone my husband is a secret romantic who plays sad piano and rescues orphans. You're going to ruin me. Absolutely. She kissed him, long and deep and sweet. Now come on, we have a daughter to meet properly. They rode to the village together, side by side on horseback, and the sight of the Duke and Duchess traveling in tandem caused a ripple of surprise among the tenants. For 3 years, they'd ridden separately, if they rode at all. The Duke on his morning inspections, the Duchess on her afternoon visits. Seeing them together, clearly comfortable with each other, sparked hope that perhaps the great Ashford Manor was finally becoming a home rather than a monument. The vicar's house was a cheerful chaos of children, chickens, and laundry. Reverend Thomas Hartley greeted them with surprised pleasure, ushering them into his cramped study while his wife herded the younger children away. "Your Graces, this is unexpected. Is everything all right?" "Very much so," Adrian assured him. "We've come to discuss Lily Marshall." The vicar's expression grew cautious. I've been meaning to speak with you about her situation. The parish can only provide temporary care, and I fear." "We want to adopt her," Isolde said, unable to contain the words. "Formally, legally, raise her as our daughter and heir." Reverend Hartley blinked, clearly stunned. "Adopt her? But, Your Grace, surely you'll have children of your own." "We can't," Isolde said quietly, with a dignity that allowed no pity. "And we don't want to wait or hope for miracles. We want Lily, if she'll have us." The vicar sat back, processing this revelation. He was a kind man, beloved by his flock, but also practical and protective. "Isn't that about the succession dispute with Lord Marcus?" Adrian appreciated the directness. "It's partly about that, yes. I won't lie to you, Reverend. Marcus is circling like a vulture, and an heir would secure the duchy against his claim. But that's not why we're here. We're here because my wife has been visiting Lily for months, has grown to love her, and I trust my wife's heart more than I trust politics." "Lily is not a chess piece," the vicar said firmly. "No," Isolde agreed. "She's a little girl who lost everything and deserves a second chance at family. We can give her that. Education, security, love. She'll want for nothing material. But more than that, we'll honor her parents' memory. She can talk about them, remember them, keep their pictures and stories alive. We won't ask her to forget them or pretend we're replacing them." The vicar studied them both for a long moment, weighing sincerity against practicality. Finally, he nodded. "I'll fetch her. But understand, if she's frightened or unwilling, this conversation ends. I won't force a traumatized child into anything, Duke and Duchess or no." "We wouldn't want you to," Adrian said. Reverend Hartley left, and Isolde found herself gripping Adrian's hand tight enough to hurt. What if she doesn't want us? What if we're just strangers with scary titles to her? Then we try again another day, and another, until she trusts us or tells us definitively to go away. But when the door opened and Lily Marshall was let in, small and thin, with tangled brown hair and eyes too old for 6 years, she took one look at Isolde and smiled. It was a tentative, fragile thing, but real. "You're the angel, Duchess," Lily said shyly. "You bring me books." Isolde's heart cracked open. "I am, and you're the girl who draws beautiful pictures. I especially loved the one of the garden. That was for you. Reverend said I could give it to you next time you visited. I'd love to have it." Isolde glanced at Adrian, then back at Lily. "This is my husband, the Duke. Would you mind if we talked with you for a few minutes?" Lily looked at Adrian with undisguised wariness. Men, Isolde realized with a pang, probably represented danger in the child's recent experience. Her father dying, strangers carrying her away from the burning cottage, the uncertain world without protection. Adrian seemed to understand. He lowered himself to the floor, sitting cross-legged so his face was level with Lily's. "Hello," he said gently. "You don't know me, so I won't be offended if you don't want to talk. But I wanted to meet you because my wife talks about you all the time, says you're brilliant and brave." "I'm not brave," Lily whispered. "Brave people don't cry every night." "That's not true." Adrian's voice was soft but firm. "Brave people cry and keep going anyway. Brave people survive terrible things and still manage to smile. From what I hear, you're one of the bravest people I know." Lily studied him with ancient eyes. "Did you lose someone?" "Many someones. In the war. Does it stop hurting?" "No," Adrian said honestly, "but it hurts less, and eventually you can remember the good parts without the pain drowning everything else out. That's what your drawings do. They keep the good parts alive." Something in Lily's expression shifted, recognition sparking. She moved closer, still cautious, but curious. "Reverend says you're very important, that you own all the land." "I do, which means I'm responsible for taking care of everyone who lives here, including you. He said you might send me to a workhouse in London." Isolde gasped, fury flashing across her face, but Adrian held up a gentle hand. "Reverend Hartley said that?" "No, Mrs. Patterson at the shop. She said orphans go to workhouses because nobody wants them." "Mrs. Patterson is wrong," Adrian said flatly, "and cruel for saying so. You're not going to any workhouse. You're going to stay here, where your parents lived, where their memory is honored." "Where?" Lily's voice was so small, so hopeful it was painful to hear. Adrian looked at Isolde, who nodded encouragingly. He took a breath. "We'd like you to stay with us, at the manor. The Duchess and we've been hoping to expand our family, and we think you'd fit perfectly." Lily frowned, processing. "You want me to be a servant? Like a maid?" "No, sweetheart," Isolde interjected, kneeling beside Adrian. "Not a servant, a daughter." The word hung in the air like a prayer. Lily stared at them both, her expression cycling through confusion, disbelief, and desperate, terrifying hope. "You want me to be my new mama and papa?" "If you'll let us," Isolde said softly. "We can't replace your parents. We would never try. But we can love you and care for you and give you a safe home. You could have your own room filled with books and art supplies. You could learn to ride horses, study with tutors, have a future full of choices. And most importantly," she reached out, waiting until Lily took her hand, "you could be part of a family again." "What if I'm bad at it?" Lily whispered. "What if I forget how to be someone's daughter?" "That's not possible," Adrian assured her. "Being a daughter isn't something you learn. It's something you are. And we'll figure it out together, all three of us. We'll make mistakes and learn and try again. That's what families do. Lily's eyes filled with tears. Mama said angels watch over us, said even when she couldn't be here, someone would take care of me. Are you the angels she meant? Isolde pulled the child into her arms, holding her while she cried. We're not angels, sweetheart. We're just two people who want very much to love you, if you'll give us the chance. Lily cried for a long time. Great heaving sobs of grief and relief tangled together. Adrian moved closer, wrapping his arms around both of them, creating a shield against the world. And slowly, gradually, Lily's sobs quieted to hiccups, then to shaky breaths. When she finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and swollen, but her eyes were clearer. Can I bring my mama's shawl and papa's pipe? They're all I have left. You can bring anything you want, Adrian promised. We'll make a special place for their things, somewhere you can visit whenever you miss them, and we'll tell you stories about them. Learn everything you remember. They'll always be part of our family, too. Really? Really. He offered his hand, so much larger than hers. What do you say, Lily Marshall? Want to come live in a drafty old manor with a duchess who reads too much and a duke who plays sad music? Lily looked at his hand, then at Isolde's face, then back at the hand. Slowly, carefully, she placed her small palm in his. Okay, she whispered. I'll try. That's all anyone can ask, Isolde said, smiling through her own tears. That's more than enough. Reverend Hartley, who had been watching from the doorway with tears streaming down his face, cleared his throat. I'll prepare the necessary documents. And your braces? Thank you. You're giving this child a miracle. She's giving us one too, Adrian said quietly, his eyes on Lily's wondering face, more than she knows. They spent the rest of the afternoon making arrangements. Lily would stay with the vicar for 2 more days while the manor prepared her rooms and the legal documents were drawn up. Adrian sent riders to London to expedite the adoption papers, calling in favors from judges and solicitors. Isolde threw herself into transforming a guest suite into a child's paradise. Soft colors, proper-sized furniture, shelves for books and treasures. The household staff rallied with enthusiastic efficiency. Mrs. Henderson personally supervised the installation of a window seat where Lily could read and watch the gardens. The head groom selected a gentle pony for the child to learn riding. The cook began planning child-friendly meals, remembering her own grandmother's recipes. By the time Lily arrived 2 days later, small bag clutched in one hand and her mother's shawl wrapped around her shoulders, Ashford Manor had transformed from a cold ducal seat into something resembling a home. Isolde met her at the door, kneeling to be eye level. "Welcome home, Lily." "It's very big," Lily said nervously, staring up at the imposing facade. "It is, but we'll explore it together, bit by bit. You'll never be lost or alone. There are always people around to help. And your rooms are in the family wing, right next to ours." "Really? I thought I'd be in the servants' quarters." "Never." Adrian appeared behind Isolde, his expression fierce. "You're our daughter now. You belong with us, always." They gave her a tour, watching her eyes grow wide at the library, the music room, the conservatory filled with flowers. But it was her own suite that made her gasp. The soft lavender walls, the shelves already filling with books, the window seat overlooking the rose garden. "This is mine?" she breathed. "All yours," Isolde confirmed. "And see this shelf?" She indicated a special display near the bed. "This is for your parents' things. Your mama's shawl can live here, and your papa's pipe. We'll add pictures as we find them, and you can tell us stories about them whenever you want." Lily touched the shawl reverently, then looked up at them with something like trust. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not making me forget. "We'd never ask you to forget," Adrian said gently. "They're part of who you are. That makes them part of our family, too." The first weeks were an adjustment for everyone. Lily was quiet and watchful, testing boundaries with the caution of a child who'd learned the world wasn't safe. She woke screaming from nightmares, clutching her mother's shawl, and Isolde would rush in to hold her until the terror passed. She flinched at sudden movements, went rigid when Adrian raised his voice, even in laughter, hoarded food in her pockets as if afraid of being hungry again. But slowly, incrementally, she began to thaw. She discovered that Adrian's study was warm and smelled like old books, that he'd let her sit on the floor and draw while he worked. She learned that Isolde truly did read as much as rumored, and that she'd read aloud for hours if asked. She found that Mrs. Henderson gave the best hugs and sneaked extra biscuits, that the head groom told terrible jokes, that the governess hired to teach her was patient and kind. 6 weeks after her arrival, she called Isolde Mama for the first time. A slip during a bedtime story, quickly retracted with panic. But Isolde simply kissed her forehead and said, "You can call me whatever feels right, sweetheart. Mama, Isolde, Duchess, or nothing at all. I'm yours regardless." 2 weeks after that, she called Adrian Papa while showing him a drawing of the three of them. He'd had to excuse himself to compose his emotions, and Lily had worried she'd done something wrong until Isolde explained that sometimes people cried when they were happy beyond words. The legal adoption was finalized 3 months after Lily's arrival, with great ceremony in the Manor's chapel. The same chapel where Isolde had broken down, where Adrian had finally claimed his wife, now witnessed them claiming their daughter. Reverend Hartley presided, and half the village attended, beaming with approval. "Lady Lily Blackwood," the Reverend pronounced formally, "beloved daughter of the Duke and Duchess of Ashford, heir to the duchy and cherished member of this community." Lily, dressed in a beautiful blue dress that matched her new mother's eyes, looked up at her parents with wonder. "I'm really yours now? Forever?" "Forever," they said in unison, and meant it with every fiber of their beings. The celebration that followed was warm and genuine, the tenants and staff mingling with minor nobility who'd come to witness the event. "Lady Lily Blackwood," the Reverend pronounced formally, "beloved daughter of the Duke and Duchess of Ashford, heir to the duchy and cherished member of this community." Lily, dressed in a beautiful blue dress that matched her new mother's eyes, looked up at her parents with wonder. "I'm really yours now? Forever?" "Forever," they said in unison, and meant it with every fiber of their beings. The celebration that followed was warm and genuine, the tenants and staff mingling with minor nobility who'd come to witness the event. Everyone understood what this meant. Not just a political maneuver to secure succession, but a real family forged from loss and love. But not everyone was celebrating. In London, Lord Marcus Blackwood received word of the adoption with cold fury. He summoned his lawyer, a sharp-featured man named Carmichael, who specialized in twisting laws to suit his client's needs. "They adopted a peasant child," Marcus spat. "A tenant's brat, and they're trying to pass her off as legitimate heir to a duchy?" "The adoption appears to be legal," Carmichael said carefully. "The family charter does allow for adopted heirs, and the documentation is impeccable. They've dotted every I, crossed every T. Then we'll challenge it on other grounds. The child's fitness, her bloodline, the suspicious timing." Marcus paced his study like a caged predator. "There has to be something we can use." "There may be one avenue," Carmichael said slowly. "The Duchess's medical condition. If we can prove she deliberately concealed information about her infertility before the marriage, we might argue for annulment on grounds of fraud. An annulled marriage means no legitimate heir, adopted or otherwise." Marcus's smile was reptilian. "Can we prove it?" I have the physician's statement. We'd need to demonstrate that she knew about the condition before the wedding, that she intentionally deceived the Duke to secure the marriage under false pretenses. She was 17, a virgin. How could she have known? Perhaps her family physician examined her prior to the engagement. Perhaps there were warning signs, irregular courses, family history. We don't need absolute proof, just enough doubt to convince the Court of Chancery that the marriage was contracted under fraudulent terms. Marcus considered this, his mind working through implications. An annulled marriage would devastate Adrian, not just politically, but emotionally. The Duke had finally opened his heart, and Marcus would crush it thoroughly. The thought was deeply satisfying. "Do it," he ordered. "File the petition and make sure the details are leaked to the society papers. I want everyone in London knowing that the great Duke of Ashford was duped by a barren princess." "As you wish, my lord." The attack came swiftly and viciously. Within a week, London's gossip rags were full of scandalous headlines. "Duke deceived," "Barren bride's secret shame," and "Ashford heir adopted to hide Duchess's deficiency." The stories were vicious, painting Isolde as a conniving social climber who trapped Adrian in a false marriage, then scrambled to adopt a peasant child to cover her inadequacy. The legal petition was even worse. It claimed Isolde had knowingly concealed medical information, that her family had pushed the marriage despite knowing she couldn't bear children, that the entire arrangement was a fraud perpetrated on the Crown and the Blackwood legacy. It demanded annulment, nullification of the adoption, and Marcus's installation as rightful heir. The first Isolde knew of the attack was when Adrian stormed into the morning room, newspapers crumpled in his fist, his face white with rage. Lily was at her lessons, thank God, spared from seeing her father's fury. "Adrian?" Isolde set down her tea, alarmed. "What's happened?" He threw the papers on the table, the headlines screaming up at them. She read them with growing horror, the words blurring through tears. "They're calling me a fraud," she whispered, "saying I trapped you, that I knew I was barren and married you anyway." "It's lies," Adrian said flatly. "All of it. Marcus's desperate attempt to delegitimize our marriage and Lily's adoption." "But some of it's true." Isolde's voice shook. "I am barren. I can't give you biological children. Maybe I should have told you before we married. Should have." "You were 17." Adrian pulled her to her feet, gripping her shoulders. "A child yourself. You had no way of knowing, no reason to suspect." "And even if you had known, it wouldn't have changed anything that matters. I chose to marry you. I choose to stay married to you. I choose our daughter and our life together. Marcus can go to hell. The court won't see it that way. If they believe I concealed medical information, then we'll prove you didn't. We'll bring in your family physician, testimony from your mother, medical experts who can verify you had no diagnosis before the marriage. We'll fight this, Isolde, together." But as more details of the petition emerged, it became clear Marcus had done his homework. He'd found Isolde's childhood physician, an elderly man named Dr. Winters, and secured a statement claiming he'd warned the princess's mother about potential fertility issues when Isolde was 15. The evidence was circumstantial, a mention of irregular monthly courses, a suggestion that Isolde might face difficulties conceiving, but presented in court, it could seem damning. Isolde's mother, Queen Consort Eleanor, was summoned to provide testimony. She arrived at Ashford Manor like an avenging angel, fury radiating from her small frame. "This is unconscionable," Eleanor declared, embracing her daughter fiercely. "That man would destroy you to gain a title. I won't allow it." "Mother, did Dr. Winters really tell you I might have trouble conceiving?" Eleanor hesitated, and that pause told Isolde everything. He mentioned it as a possibility. You were late to your courses, had some discomfort, but it was speculation, nothing definitive, certainly nothing that warranted disclosing to a potential husband. Half the women in England have irregular courses at 15, but Marcus's lawyers will argue you had a duty to disclose. Then I'll argue back that medical privacy supersedes marital negotiation, that my daughter's body is not a commodity to be inspected and approved before purchase. I'll argue that Adrian married you for alliance and affection, not your womb. She argue. She stopped, seeing Isolde's devastated expression. Oh, darling, this isn't your fault. Isn't it? If I'd just been normal, if my body had cooperated, then you'd still be married to Adrian, still be mother to Lily, still be facing Marcus's jealousy and spite. He would have found another weapon. This isn't about your fertility, Isolde. It's about power and inheritance and a cruel man's entitlement. Adrian, who'd been listening quietly, stepped forward. Your mother's right, and we have weapons too. The adoption is legal under the family charter, regardless of the marriage's status. Even if Marcus somehow succeeds in having the marriage annulled, which he won't, Lily remains my legal heir. I've acknowledged her, named her, given her my protection. That can't be undone. But the scandal, Isolde protested. An annulled marriage means she's not legitimate. Her claim to the title would be contested forever. Only if we let Marcus control the narrative. Adrian's expression turned calculating, strategic. We need to go on the offensive. Show London society exactly what kind of man Marcus is. Expose his gambling debts, his cruelty, his complete unsuitability for the duchy. We need to make him so toxic that even if he wins the legal battle, he loses the social war. How? By telling our story, the true one. Not in courtrooms, but in drawing rooms and ballrooms and society columns. We show them a marriage built on respect and love, a family created by choice, a daughter cherished not for her bloodline, but her heart. We make them fall in love with Lily, with us, with the idea that family is more than blood. Eleanor's eyes lit up. A social campaign. Brilliant! And I can help. Queen Consort Eleanor endorsing her daughter's adoption of a common-born child? That's a powerful statement. About compassion over tradition. We'll host a ball, Isolde said, her mind racing. Introduce Lily to society properly. Let them see she's not some peasant brat, but a bright, lovely child who's already becoming a perfect little duchess. And we'll invite everyone Marcus depends on for support, Adrian added. Force them to choose sides publicly. Most of the ton follows fashion and sentiment. If we can make our story sympathetic, Marcus's cruelty becomes unfashionable. They spent the next weeks executing their plan with military precision. Adrian called in favors from his war comrades, many of whom had become influential lords and politicians. Eleanor worked her connections at court, reminding people that challenging Isolde meant challenging the crown's judgment in arranging the marriage. Isolde wrote letters to every society matron she'd ever charmed, telling her story with vulnerability and grace. And through it all, they protected Lily. She knew something was wrong. Children always know, but they shielded her from the worst of it. They told her that some people were angry about her adoption, but that it was because those people didn't understand love, didn't believe family could be chosen. "Will I have to go away?" Lily asked one night, her small face pinched with worry. "If the angry people win?" "No," Adrian said firmly, gathering her into his lap. "You're not going anywhere. You're my daughter, legally and morally and in every way that matters. I don't care what any court says. You're mine, and I protect what's mine. Even if it makes people mad? Especially then. Sometimes doing the right thing makes people very mad indeed, but that doesn't make it less right." Lily considered this, then nodded with a solemnity beyond her years. "Okay, I trust you, Papa." The words shattered something in Adrian's chest, rebuilt it stronger. I love you, little one, more than titles or reputation or anything else in this world. I love you too." She yawned, snuggling against his chest. "And Mama, can I tell you a secret?" "Always. I think Mama and Papa Marshall sent you to me. I dreamed about them, and Mama said, 'Don't be scared, Lily girl, the angels are coming.' And then you came, so I think you're the angels they meant." Isolde, standing in the doorway, pressed a hand to her mouth to stifle a sob. Adrian's eyes met hers over Lily's head, and the look that passed between them was one of shared devastation and fierce protective love. "Maybe we are," Adrian said softly, "and maybe you're ours. Maybe that's how this works. We save each other." The ball announcing Lily's formal introduction to society was held on a perfect spring evening. Ashford Manor glowed with candlelight and flowers, transformed from cold monument to warm showcase. Every person who mattered in English society had been invited, and nearly all had accepted, some out of genuine affection, others out of morbid curiosity. Lily wore a dress of white silk with blue ribbons, her hair arranged in careful ringlets. She was terrified but brave, coached by Isolde on how to curtsy, by Adrian on how to shake hands properly, by Eleanor on how to charm elderly lords with sincere questions about their grandchildren. When the guests began arriving, Isolde and Adrian stood at the top of the grand staircase, Lily between them, holding both their hands. The picture they presented was powerful, a united family, faces serene, showing no hint of the battle raging in courts and newspapers. "Remember," Isolde whispered to Lily, "you don't have to be perfect. Just be yourself. That's always enough." "What if they don't like me?" "Impossible," Adrian assured her. "You're brilliant and kind. Anyone who doesn't like you is clearly deficient in taste and judgment." Lily giggled despite her nerves, and that sound, bright and genuine, carried across the assembled crowd. Conversations paused, heads turned, and when the family descended the stairs together, moving with unconscious synchronization, the ton witnessed something rare: authenticity. The evening unfolded like a fairy tale. Lily charmed the Duke of Wellington by asking about his horses. She impressed Lady Castlereagh with her knowledge of flowers. She made the intimidating Duchess of Devonshire laugh with an innocent observation about how many forks were really necessary for dinner. And through it all, Adrian and Isolde stayed close, guiding without hovering, protecting without smothering. Lord Marcus Blackwood attended, of course. He couldn't afford to be seen avoiding the event. But his presence was like a cold wind through the festivities, his pale eyes tracking Lily with undisguised calculation. Adrian intercepted him near the refreshment tables, his smile all teeth. "Marcus, how good of you to come." "I wouldn't miss it," Marcus replied smoothly. "Such a touching display. Though I wonder how long the sentiment will last once reality sets in." Reality has set in. My daughter is loved, my marriage is strong, and your legal maneuverings are failing spectacularly. The Court of Chancery is unlikely to overturn a marriage based on speculative medical testimony from when my wife was a child. We'll see. I have new evidence emerging, testimony that will prove nothing except your own desperation. Adrian leaned in, voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "Here's what's going to happen, cousin. You're going to withdraw your petition. You're going to publicly apologize to my wife for the slander. And you're going to disappear into whatever hole you crawled out of. Because if you don't," his smile never wavered, "I'll release the documents proving you embezzled from the family trust. I'll expose your debts to French spies during the war. I'll destroy you so thoroughly that you'll be lucky to get a position as a clerk in Scotland." Marcus's face went ashen. "You're bluffing. You have no such documents." "Don't I? I've had investigators working for months, Marcus, ever since you started sniffing around my marriage. I know where every penny of your debt is hidden. I know which gambling dens you frequent, which creditors you've defrauded, which military secrets you sold to keep yourself in brandy and whores. Push me, and I'll make sure every detail becomes public knowledge. That's blackmail. That's survival. You came after my family. Did you really think I wouldn't come after yours? Adrian straightened, his expression returning to pleasant neutrality. The choice is yours. Withdrawal and obscurity, or exposure and ruin. You have 1 week to decide. He walked away without waiting for a response, returning to Isolde's side in time to see Lily successfully navigate a conversation with 3 dowager duchesses who looked absolutely enchanted. "What did you say to Marcus?" Isolde murmured. "He looks like he swallowed a toad." "Just reminded him that I'm not the idealistic soldier he remembers. War teaches you to fight dirty when necessary." Adrian slipped an arm around her waist. "Hell withdraw the petition. He's too much of a coward to face real consequences. And if he doesn't, then I'll burn his reputation to the ground and salt the earth after. But hell withdraw. Men like Marcus only understand power, and I just showed him mine." 5 days later, Marcus Blackwood's lawyers filed a notice of withdrawal with the Court of Chancery. The official statement claimed he'd been misinformed about the circumstances and wished to withdraw any aspersions cast upon the Duchess of Ashford's character. It was a humiliating climb-down, and society took notice. The scandal that had threatened to destroy Isolde and Adrian instead elevated them. They became symbols of modern love, of families built by choice rather than blood, of nobility that valued character over lineage. Invitations flooded in. Other families with adopted children reached out, grateful for the public example. The Queen herself sent a letter praising their admirable devotion to duty and compassion. And through it all, Lily bloomed. She started calling Isolde and Adrian Mama and Papa without hesitation. Her nightmares decreased. She learned to ride, to paint, to play piano, badly but enthusiastically. She made friends among the neighboring gentry's children. She became, in every way that mattered, their daughter. 1 year after the adoption, on a golden autumn afternoon, the family sat together in the garden. Lily was sprawled on a blanket, sketching flowers. Isolde was reading poetry aloud. Adrian was pretending to review correspondence, but was actually just watching his wife and daughter, his heart so full it ached. "Papa?" Lily looked up from her drawing. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you ever wish I was really yours? Like from Mama's tummy?" Adrian set aside his papers and moved to sit beside her on the blanket. "You are really mine, but I understand what you're asking. And no, I don't wish that. Because if you'd been born from Mama, you wouldn't be you. You'd be some different child with different memories and experiences and qualities. And I quite like you exactly as you are. But you don't have blood heirs. Doesn't that make you sad? Honestly, sometimes. Not because I don't love you. I do, more than I thought possible to love anyone. But because I know Mama grieves it. She wanted to experience pregnancy, childbirth, all of that. And I'm sad she doesn't get to have those experiences." He cupped Lily's face gently. "But here's the truth, little one. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, who loves you even when it's hard or complicated or inconvenient. And by that measure, we're the realest family I know." "I think so too," Lily said, smiling. "I just wanted to make sure you knew I'm glad you picked me, even if it was because Mama couldn't have babies." "We didn't pick you because of that," Isolde interjected, setting down her book. "We picked you because of who you are, smart and brave and kind, because you needed a family and we needed you." The timing might have been influenced by circumstances, but the choice was all about love. Okay. Lily returned to her drawing, satisfied. Then, without looking up, I still miss my first mama and papa sometimes. Is that bad? Never, Adrian said firmly. They were your parents too. They loved you, shaped you, gave you life. Missing them is how we honor them, and we want you to honor them, always. Can we visit their graves tomorrow? I want to tell them about the pony you got me. Of course. We'll bring flowers. They sat in comfortable silence, three people who had found each other through loss and circumstance and somehow built something beautiful from the wreckage. The sun filtered through autumn leaves, painting everything gold. And for the first time in years, Adrian felt peace. That night, after Lily was tucked into bed with her mother's shawl and her father's pipe nearby, Adrian and Isolde retired to their chambers. They'd long since made it a true marriage in every sense. Passionate, intimate, sometimes playful, always genuine. "Thank you," Isolde said suddenly, wrapped in his arms. "For what?" "For that day in the chapel, for not letting me drown in despair, for seeing me as more than a womb with a title." "You're so much more," Adrian murmured against her hair. "You're everything." "We still don't have biological children. That diagnosis was right, even if the timing of it was weaponized. Doesn't that bother you?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "Not often. Mostly I'm just grateful for what we have. Lily, this life, you. I'd rather have this reality than some fantasy version where you conceived easily, but we never truly connected. What we built, it's real," Isolde. "Messy, imperfect, and absolutely real." She turned in his arms to face him. "I love you. I don't think I've said that enough, but I do. Desperately, completely. I love you too. Have since that first night when you stood in the moonlight, breaking but refusing to shatter." "You're the strongest person I know. I had help staying strong. We help each other. That's what partners do." They made love slowly, tenderly, with none of the urgency of early days, but something deeper. The comfort of two people who knew each other's scars and loved them anyway. Afterwards, in the darkness, Isolde traced the bullet wound on Adrian's shoulder. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Marrying me instead of someone who could have given you undisputed heirs?" "Never, not once. You gave me everything that matters. Love, family, purpose, peace. Everything else is just politics and paperwork." He caught her hand, brought it to his lips. "Besides, look what we created together. A daughter who's kind and brilliant. A marriage that's actually happy. A legacy of compassion that will outlast any bloodline. I'd say we did rather well. The Ton thinks we're revolutionary. Good, let them. Maybe we'll start a trend. Marriages based on affection. Families built by choice. Nobility that values character. We could change the world, Duchess. One adopted daughter at a time?" "Exactly." Isolde laughed, the sound pure and joyful. "You know what the best part is? I'm happy. Truly, genuinely happy. A year ago, I thought my life was ending, and instead, it was just beginning." "Ours," Adrian corrected. "Our life was just beginning, and it's far from over. We have years ahead, years of watching Lily grow, years of building our family and legacy, years of simply existing together. I intend to enjoy every single one. Promise? Promise. You already gave me everything, Isolde, everything I needed to become whole again. That's worth more than any heir, any title, any dynasty. You gave me love, and that's the only legacy that really matters." She kissed him then, pouring a year's worth of gratitude and joy and deep, abiding love into it. Outside, the moon rose over Ashford Manor, painting everything silver. And inside, a family slept, imperfect, unconventional, and absolutely, completely real. Three people bound not by blood, but by choice, by survival, by the fierce determination to love despite loss. A duke who learned that strength came from vulnerability. A princess who discovered her worth had nothing to do with her womb. And a little girl who found angels in the form of parents who chose her. In the end, that was the only story that mattered. Not the scandal or the politics or the medical diagnoses. Just love, stubborn and resilient and transformative. The kind of love that built families from ashes and turned cold manners into homes. The kind of love that proved beyond any doubt that the best things in life were never inherited. They were chosen. And they had chosen each other.